It was the lunch table Trump snack. If you looked in your sack lunch and saw a snack pack, Swiss Miss, or Jell-O brand chocolate pudding, you knew you had top currency. The lunch table and all its contents were your domain, and you could trade for anything you wanted. Not that you ever would, of course. Indulging yourself in a little chocolate pudding doesn't have to be a nostalgic childhood memory or a feel-good pastime. Here at the At Home Show, we're pleased to tell you that today, June 26th, is the National Chocolate Pudding Day, when adults and kids alike can eat spoonful after spoonful of the stuff with abandon. If it's pudding's creaminess and smooth texture that makes you melt, you may grimace at its origins as a sometimes savory, cakey dessert. In the 17th century, pudding was served after dinner and included everything from grains to raw mutton fat. Definitely not the spoonable suaveness we know and love today. And while the origin of National Chocolate Pudding Day is a bit obscure, we can at least take comfort in knowing it arose after creamy pudding was invented in the mid-1800s. We take our chocolate pudding without raw kidney fat, thank you. And that includes you, Josh. Live from the Green Room Studios, from the spacious property of Bates Nursery and Garden Center, 3810 Whites Creek Pike, it's the At Home Show with Josh Cary and David Bates.
Oh, yeah.
Josh would put raw mutton fat in his pudding, by the way.
He probably does. Anyway, welcome in, everybody. This is the At Home Show. I'm David Bates. Josh has got the day off. We actually asked him to take the day off. Not because he needed a break, we needed one, right? No, that's not true,
stay home,
Josh. You know that's not true. Appreciate everyone tuning in today. Of course, if you're looking at us right now, we're either on Facebook Live or on YouTube or any of the other different areas that we stream out to. So we welcome you into the show. I ask that you share our little program here. Share it out on your file and like it. And then we won't talk about that anymore the rest of the way. Hey, to my left, you see Austin Lowen. Austin, no stranger to the program. He's coming back off vacation, all rested and relaxed and full of information, which he's going to impart on you today. And this is an audience participation program, 615-499-6690, just like that number shows you right there. You can either call in and leave a voicemail, or you can text us at that number and text your question out. We also can be reached via our Instagram page that the very capable Cary, she always oversees that, so she's standing by. Good morning, Cary. Great to see you this morning. So why don't we just start down that path, Cary? Wait a minute. I guess I'm getting out of line here.
Whoa.
See,
Getting too excited.
I got to do weather. Well, I was...
Maybe we need Josh, after all, to keep you in line.
Well, perhaps. Anyway, and me to keep him in line, and we've had a quarter of a century to rehearse that little bit. Today is Saturday, the 26th of June. We are, believe it or not, bidding June farewell this coming week. So it will be a partly cloudy day, seasonably warm, 91 degrees with a mix of clouds and sun. Tomorrow, perhaps slightly warmer, 92, same deal. 90, partly cloudy skies. We're going to have pretty calm winds. It's not going to be very much of a breeze. Monday, we do have a chance of some scattered thunderstorms moving in, and it will be, again, about 91 degrees. And as we go through the week, Tuesday is kind of a similar day as to today and Sunday. And then we do have a chance of rain. Now, at this time of year, you can never tell whether those rain forecasts that are 5 or 6, 7 days out are actually a real forecast, or if it's just the obligatory there's rain in the future forecast because it's summer, because almost any day it's possible because of the amount of humidity and the saturated atmosphere. But currently we are not experiencing any of that. it's really nice conditions, sunny skies, 76 degrees here in the Music City, live from the green room at Bates Nursery and Garden Center. So now we are
ready to go.
Ready to shift gears.
Get into
now
everything
that I've gotten
else.
that out of the way. And Cary, good morning again.
Good morning
We
again.
appreciate you being here.
Wait, is this a plant rant?
No, not yet. That's too early, too soon.
No, we don't want. No, we can't go there just yet.
I got to get warmed up a little bit. But I do have a good question for you guys already. Got to get this close. It's always sunny. How do I know if I'm over or under watering my hydrangeas? That's a good Austin question right there.
That's a really good Austin question. I might have some input on that. What you got, Austin?
Well, I love hydrangeas. Hydrangeas are easy to tell when they need water because they wilt. If they're not wilting, don't water them. They need to kind of latch in and, find their own water eventually. So if you keep them too wet all the time, they're not going to, kind of root in the earth.
Now, one of the things that is a caveat to what you just said is that hydrangeas can wilt and not be dry.
Exactly.
And because of particularly the macrophylla cultivars, when that in Latin means big-leaved, they have this ability to transpire a lot of moisture more quickly than the stems and the vascular system can actually bring it up. Mm-hmm. So sometimes, particularly at this time of year, if they're getting a little much sun in the afternoons, they can look like they're dry, and you might put your finger in the soil and they seem to be completely wet. Mm-hmm. So that's one of the things you need to, if you see them wilting down, then check that soil moisture first, because you may find that about an hour after sunset, they stand right back up again.
Exactly, yeah. They'll be wilty at night, and then in the morning they'll be perked right back up. And it kind of depends, too, on if it's a new plant or if it's an old plant. If it's a 2 or 3 year old, 4 year old hydrangea that's wilting, like David said, it's probably not dry. It's probably just sun wilting because of that afternoon sunshine and the heat. But if it's a brand new planting and you're seeing some wilting, you need to kind of look at it every day and make sure if that thing's really turned down, you need to give it some added water if it needs it.
Yeah, and this is a very hydrangea-centric year.
Oh, yeah.
All cultivars, all different types of hydrangeas this has been the year where they have all just done beautifully. And if you scroll through social media, the pages are filled with everyone sharing their great photographs of their hydrangeas, and that's good because that's why you buy the things. You want them to have flowers, and whether it's your garden type hydrangeas that are a variety of different colors, the Annabelle cultivars, actually there are pink flowering types now. Those tend to bloom. Those are all more sun-loving types. But no matter what kind you have, or if it's an oak leaf hydrangea, and those, of course, are pretty versatile at handling full sun and a fair amount of shade additionally. So hopefully that gives some insight as far as to how and when to water hydrangeas. And pretty much at this time of year, if in doubt, you're probably not going to keep them overwatered.
No.
It's not likely, particularly when we're going through these extended dry spells. So hopefully that gives you an answer you can work with and use. What else you got over there, Cary? Anything else that's...
Oh, we have quite a few.
Right.
From Elizabeth Duffy Bond, Japanese beetles all over my veggies and flowers. Help. That's a fun one.
Japanese beetle time. I just noticed mine, first one 3 days ago on some of my roses. I got crepe myrtles, I've got hydrangeas, I've got hibiscus,
and
all of which
all.
they love them all. And it's about that time. There are definitely chemical sprays you can use to get rid of Japanese beetles. Pyrethrins, permethrin are two common chemicals that really take care of Japanese beetles well. But
Sevin dust.
Sevin dust works just fine if you're okay
and
with
if you're
sand
into
dust.
more organic, there actually is an 8 dust.
Yeah.
Oh.
That's right.
That's a kind of a nice little pun that the manufacturers made on that product.
Oh my gosh, that is why it's called 8, isn't it?
Yes.
Oh,
So the
My
reason
life.
now you just had an epiphany, right? That little light bulb just
No
went
more
off.
7. We
it's
got 8.
it's like you're going through hyperspace, and like things make more sense. That's what's happening right now.
So the other, and what my preferred method to use are the sex attractant pheromone traps, and those are best used as a gift to your neighbor, because what you want to do is try to lure them away. So if your neighbor won't accept them as a gift, just put them at the furthest point away from the things that are, maybe there's a plant you deem to be the sacrificial specimen. Maybe it's a big crepe myrtle that you go, okay, they're not going to do that much damage. I'll put it back here on the back fence away from everything else. But those are quite effective. You do need a number of them because they fill up fast. It draws them in like a magnet. And once you have them in an enclosed container like that, then it's a matter of what you decide you want to do with them. Mm-hmm. And, there's a lot of ways you can dispose of them. We'll leave that to your imagination,
Yeah.
So, Japanese beetles are another one. You can spray them, but it's a bit of an endeavor that just goes on and on. Generally speaking, Japanese beetle go through cycles. And if they're really bad at where you live or where you are around the plants this year, chances are next year they won't be quite as bad, and then the year following they'll be less still. They become naturalized somewhat, and the birds and all the other things that would feed on them tend to figure out that, hey, this is another food source. I can munch on these, and they become less problematic, but they probably don't completely ever go away.
Yeah.
So, Japanese beetles, there you go.
They're always there.
Got anything else?
We do have a few. Want to keep going?
Oh, let's go with one more. Then
One more.
we'll shift gears for a moment here.
All right. We do have a question from last week that got asked after the show about squirrels destroying their fig tree. That's a tricky one.
That is a subject that's close to home for me because it's very. I have a wonderful fig at my house. It is absolutely loaded with fruit right now. It's all still green, so they're leaving it alone right now. But I'm getting ready to invoke what I refer to as the Witness Protection Program, and we will relocate these offenders. And I've got a couple of these Have a Heart humane traps. Now, the key to this are two things. One, you've got to have these humane traps to be able to catch them in, and they're really easy to catch. Peanut butter and sunflower seeds smeared on they cannot resist it. Matter of fact, I've caught two in the same trap at the same time on multiple occasions, and they really don't like being that close together, so I try to get them out. And then you got to have a place that's approved to be able to relocate them to. City parks and state parks are not those locations, so you won't be given permission. However, if you either have property that's out in maybe an outlying area, or you have access, maybe a friend that will allow it, that's a good way to go. The hills out here in Whites Creek, I had some friends that used to live up the road. They were avid hunters. They pretty much hunted all the squirrel out of Whites Creek. There were none, absolutely none. Twice over a 30-day period, I have caught and released 30 squirrels. And so when I next do it again, I know that it'll take about a month before I reach that point where I have gotten them all.
That's a lot of squirrels.
That's a lot of squirrels.
Squirrel a day.
I said, sometimes I get, I get two. I get one in each cage, or I have gotten three before. We're two in one cage and one in. They have to really be attacking the peanut butter to get two in one shot, but. It's quite effective, but you do have to have a place to be able to relocate them in that is approved, and you can't just, you hate to just do it. Maybe you're a big fan of squirrel and dumplings, which I happen to love, and so you could go that route. There's nothing illegal about that. But the other problem with figs is that squirrels are not the only one. I've got a blue jay that makes me want to shake my fist. And so we're going to have to get some netting out over our fig trees, because I love the figs. As a matter of fact, I recently was, you might have noticed, for a couple of weeks I was out of the studio here, or maybe you didn't notice, but I was. And I discovered I don't eat sweets, but I do eat fresh fruit. Mm-hmm. figs and strawberries with whipped cream that's sweetened with honey is, I'm talking about, wonderful.
That sounds amazing.
I could eat a bowl full of it right now. But
Tyler, go make that for us. Just kidding. You're doing plenty.
All right, you're on your own.
No.
615-499-6690. You can give us a call. You can send us a text message. You can also go over to our Instagram page, The At Home Show with Josh Cary and David Bates, and leave us a message right there. Maybe send a image if you want us to take a look at something. If you've got a issue or a problem, or you just want to show how proud you are of the gardening success you've had. We've got a lot of folks who are sharing those kind of images with us, and it's always good to hear, good to see, and good to hear about people's experience and where they're doing in the garden. There's a couple of things that I think that are newsworthy that we ought to talk about, and some very disheartening things. The collapse of the high-rise in the condominium complex in Miami area is one of those things that happened this week, and our thoughts and prayers go out to all the families and the folks affected by that. It's a major tragedy, and apparently this is one of the things that I'm this just in. If I'm living in a high rise and somebody suggests that there could be something structural going on, I want to know.
Fix it now.
Fix it now.
Yeah.
This consultant in 2018 urged managers to repair cracked columns and crumbling concrete. So no doubt there'll be a lot more forthcoming on that story. Still 159 people unaccounted for. That's not
not a good sign.
No, it's not a good sign. So, and as I read, there is one of the missing is a Vanderbilt student who's
really,
yeah, and he had gone to Miami to visit with family. So, really sad to hear about that effect for all those families. And of course, there is that one connection to the Middle Tennessee area that is known of. So thoughts and prayers go out for all those, and of course, hopefully the rescue workers and the ones who can successfully rescue a few others and also keep themselves safe in the process. And the one thing that came out yesterday is the Pentagon UFO report, or UAPs as they refer to them now.
Unidentified aerial phenomenon, for those that don't know.
Yeah. And it means the same thing. It's just it sounds more official. And it's not as when you say those words together, it doesn't sound like you're talking necessarily about little green men, which is the first thought that a lot of people have. But the report really didn't clear up anything. What it did say, though, that there's at least 11 cases of near misses where this, and there are, I believe, as I read, there's at least 5 different phenomenon that are.
That's what I was about to ask. How many different types of crafts?
There's like 5 different crafts, for the lack of a better term. The one these near misses, I think, is this cube that's inside of a sphere, a translucent sphere.
I didn't even know anything about that one.
It's a cube inside of a sphere, and it has this thing where it buzzes directly between fighter jets that are going like,
how big is this thing? Because fighter jets aren't that big.
They're maybe like 40 to 60 feet, depending on how they're pretty good size. But this thing is not that big. It's maybe.
Would it fit in this room?
Oh yeah, this is not a big thing. It's just like a cube that's maybe. As I understand them to say, and I might be wrong about this, so please tell me if I'm wrong. I haven't read through all of it. It's a lot of stuff to read. And if you're interested at all, just search it out online and check it all out. But my belief is like a 3 or 4 foot square cube that's inside of a sphere that might be 5 or 6 feet across.
So this is most likely a drone of some kind.
I think that it is believed by most that all of these are
Remotely piloted.
And just think about it from this standpoint. I mean, we've got all this hardware up on Mars, not just the U.S., but China also has remote controlled things. They're also on the moon, and that's the way that we do it. It kind of makes sense that others who might traverse into our domain. But here's what they say, and here's what they don't say. They do say that there's no proof that these are extraterrestrial in nature. However, they don't believe that these are from other domestic or known sources on this planet. So what does that leave? So it's
what would be ironic is if the proof of more life in the universe other than us was us. Because they discovered us before we discovered them.
Or if it's some kid in some living room somewhere who's remote controlling all these, and they go, "It's Johnny. I always knew there was something strange about him."
Oh yeah, it's what's interesting is these, and I don't know, I haven't seen any other news stories that they keep going into the ocean. They don't go into space, do they?
Oh yes, no, they come from above 80,000 feet. And in a second, they're at sea level.
So we can track them now. Do they not see where these things are going when they leave the atmosphere?
No. Well, they haven't admitted that if they do.
Okay, so yeah, they know.
Yeah,
they know.
I mean, they've got the most sophisticated. I believe what the USS Princeton, which is I think what they call an Aegis class surveillance ship, when they're doing these. Things at sea that, they've got, the ultimate as far as all kinds of radar and other ways, infrared, they've got everything.
The best that humankind can do.
And the guy, Louis Alonso, I think is his name, or Elizondo is his last name. He was the guy who was the head of the ATIP task force, which is essentially, it was to try to figure out what these things are and what they are not. And he resigned because he didn't like the direction it was going. He felt like that it was going to kind of get buried. So I think there'll be more out of Luis coming. But he says that, the big complaint is that how poor quality the videos are.
That's on purpose.
And he says, there's high definition footage. I
was thinking there has to be.
He says, no. There's footage that's you don't go, I can't make out what that is or what it is. The reference to the giant Tic Tac that the David Fravor and the other pilots, the aviators that saw those back in 2004. And if you've never had a Tic Tac, visualize it as a large propane tank, that's rounded on both ends. It's kind of like that. So, but big, like 40 feet long and maybe 15 feet in diameter. But it has no seams on it anywhere, no markings of any kind, no visible or detectable means of propulsion.
It's going to be Kurt Russell from Guardians of the Galaxy Part 2. That's like that ship he flew.
Or maybe Part 3,
yeah.
Depending on how soon it comes out. So anyway, this all falls into, there's a head scratcher.
What if they come from the moon?
They could come from the far side of the moon.
They say, there's certain people who believe certain theories that say, we went over there and we found something. That's why we quit going.
Well, and I don't know that could or could not be the reason.
Of course, there's no atmosphere on the moon. So
there's no atmosphere on the moon, but apparently if these are things that come from elsewhere, atmosphere or the lack thereof really doesn't matter. Yeah. And particularly if you're talking about things that are drone in nature, they can pretty much handle a really wide range of conditions. So
I'm wondering, since they've been detected since 2004, is it only because we've developed the technology that's advanced enough to track them, or is it a relatively recent phenomenon?
I would say that it's not relatively recent. I think it's been going on. If you go back to World War II, there were reports by U.S. and Allied fighter pilots of what they call the Foo Fighters. And, most people think that's just a band. But these Foo Fighters were these things that trailed along and seemed to be able to move in ways that they couldn't move. And so there were reports going all the way back to
Hitler. Hitler, too, was trying to develop that Nazi Bell thing that was supposedly based off something like that.
Yeah. And so if, in fact, these things do exist and there have perhaps been some crashes, let it suffice to say that the United States is not the only country that's interested in this or probably has artifacts and has tried to reverse engineer. I mean, that's, but from everything, if in fact all this is true, that it's so far beyond what we've got, we can't even figure out how to reverse engineer. We can see what it's doing, but we have no idea how to make that happen.
So have you ever been to Roswell?
Oh, well, I've been around it. I've never been invited onto the base. If that's what you're asking.
No, not Area 51, Roswell, New Mexico.
Oh, Roswell, I have been through
town.
there.
I've been there as well.
So
it's not that exciting.
No, it's not. They have like a UFO McDonald's. Or something.
Yeah, they do.
They've got just
one strip.
They've got the one place
I'm
called
excited.
the Alien.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, the point I get when we went to visit my buddy Justin that lives down in Hobbs, New Mexico, we went through there on the way to Albuquerque, and they don't actually remember where that crash happened now. If you ask them, it's in 4 different places.
Well,
it's becoming legend.
Yeah, well, it has escaped the laws of natural.
Has it escaped, or has it been we actually don't want you going anywhere?
Well, I think that those who have tried to suggest that it's not possible that there's any other life anywhere in this expansive universe that is so much bigger than anybody's brains can fathom, we're probably not the only thing. Now, the part that comes down to that's difficult to process is do they possess the ability to traverse these distances, and how can they possibly do that? And that's where it gets into that stuff that's way over all of our head.
Well, that's what I was
Spooky
saying.
Action.
I was joking when I said about the moon, but so we know based off what we know, you can't go faster than light, and we don't even know how to achieve to even get close to that, right? So
that's what the whole warp drive concept is, that you bend the fabric of space-time and you move within the realms of that.
But because right now we know that doesn't exist, not saying it doesn't exist somewhere.
We don't have the ability to do that.
Wouldn't the simplest answer be that they're from somewhere in the solar system?
Well, as far as our proximity goes, yeah. I mean, they're neighbors.
Simply because it would be...
They're not coming from some galaxy that's trillions of light years away or whatever.
Because even with light speed, it would take lifetimes.
You're right. I think you get a light year is a little bit under 6 trillion miles in a year.
Yeah.
So that's a pretty big number. So anyway,
I want to know, David, do we have any UGOs out there?
UGOs, they give us a unidentified
growing objects.
There's probably some of that out there, and
have you seen them?
Well, let me tell you the place to go looking. Maybe you can't identify it, but with our great staff here at Bates Nursery and Garden Center, we do have the ability and the experience, the expertise. We're not keeping it a secret. You see a whole assortment of things we have out here in front of us, and what Cary has back in on the display end of the studio here at Bates Nursery and Garden Center. We really work hard at bringing you everything you could possibly want in the way of gardening stuff. Now, on the show here, we get a little off track every now and then, and we have just experienced that example of that. However, when you come out to Bates Nursery and Garden Center, we really do work diligently at having the most extensive selection of plant material available anywhere, not just in Middle Tennessee, but anywhere. We have the best suppliers from all over the country and locally. And we bring those products in, and we really take special pains to only have the very best. Because when you spend your hard-earned money, you want it to do the very best, and you get that. We are strong advocates of Earth Mix Garden products, so we sure encourage you to use that, whether you're using Earth Mix Garden or Earth Mix Landscape. One thing I should tell you, and if you don't know, I do a weekly newsletter, and in that newsletter this week, I revealed that we're doing a little special thing for our Bates Rewards members, where that all living things, all growing plants are 10% off, and in addition to that, all bagged Earth Mix Garden products. So no matter if you want Earth Mix Garden or Earth Mix Landscape or Supernatural or any of the other great products, all those, and along with all plants, and that includes trees, shrubs, ground covers, edibles, all those things, perennials, just like you see right here, all 10% off. So come out and see us at Bates Nursery and Garden Center. And if you're not a member, well, it's really easy. You can either go to our website and scroll down and sign up right there for the newsletter on the Bates Nursery page, or you can sign up while you're right here, and you'll receive that newsletter every week. We don't share your information with anyone, and any time you want out of it, well, you just unsubscribe, and there's links top and bottom of every newsletter. So we make it really easy to join and to unjoin if you so desire. By the way, we did cross over a kind of a milestone barrier, and I'm totally shocked by this. 26,000 subscribers now to our newsletter, and so thank you, and I appreciate you putting some value in what I write out there and put forth, and we appreciate the opportunity to give you a little gardening information, and also impart wherever it is my brain goes on a weekly basis. I don't there's not enough gardening acumen up there to keep it on strictly gardening. So I talk about the arrow of time this week, and if you want to see that article, you can go to the Bates Nursery website and click on that. And I think we've still got the last week's up there, but that's out there on our Facebook page, and it will be up on the website here quickly. So check that out over at batesnursery.com, and bless you, Michael.
Thanks.
Yes.
Even though you had your cough button on, we still, so bless you.
I'm telling you, it would have been much louder.
It would have been, yes.
And speaking of garden information, we have scheduled some more live webinars on the Bates Nursery Botanical Boot Camp page.
Wonderful. We've kind of taken a break during the spring season because of the demands of everything going on. So make sure and check that out. If you have subscribed to that, you'll get notifications. Is that right, Tyler?
That is right.
And if you want to subscribe, you can do so by, tell them.
You can scroll down to the below the newsletter slide on the website.
Right there where it says
click on register now.
Right there. So you click on that, and then it comes up, and then you can.
And right there, sign up to learn more about the boot camp. Put your name and email in.
Right.
And then below, you'll see the dates that we have scheduled for the webinars.
There they are. And then here's a list of other things. And this is one that Cary put out there, I believe, about summarizing your house plants.
Oh, yeah. Did do that.
And so, and what's the sum of your house plants? If it comes up to be less than 99, well, you don't have enough.
You don't have enough. I have like 2 something.
Yes.
You need more.
So anyway, so check that out. Hey, we appreciate you giving us a moment to talk about all that, and tuning in here every Saturday morning. So thank you for that. And you know what? I think it's time for a plant rant.
Sometimes she just needs to vent a little. It's Plant Rants with Cary Gant.
And good morning again.
Well, you're all boxed in there with
I am.
all manner of flora.
I'm in a magical jungle today. Kind of got myself surrounded.
So, what you got some kind of a theme in mind there? Obviously,
I have a little bit of a theme.
Those, unless I'm mistaken, are all perennials.
On my right.
On
yes,
your right,
correct.
okay.
They are all perennials. Now on my left over here, I've brought in quite a few tropicals because we are still getting some in from time to time. And one of the most exciting things that we've gotten in recently lemon and lime trees. So I know a lot of people have been coming in over like the last month, and we've been out. We had kind of a hard time getting them.
Very hard time.
But Julie found them. They're back in stock, and we have quite a few right now. So if you've been looking for that, been calling, coming in, we do have those back.
Now, I will say this as a caveat on citrus. Many people do really well with them. You cannot leave them out all year long.
No.
They have to be brought in during the cool months. So probably by mid-November, for sure, they got to go back in the house. So just be mindful of that. They need a lot of sun also. So be mindful of that. So if you're going to get one to put it on the patio or on your deck area, wherever outdoors, just remember you're going to have a place inside that gets a really high amount of sunlight to be able to winter those over.
Yeah, I've got mine in the winter in a south-facing window, and I probably have to water it about twice a day. It dries out.
Twice a day?
Uh-huh. And I had most of the new growth in the winter on my lemon tree.
Right, and
which
that's
was
when
wild.
that's when you're going to see it that go into bloom and you start having fruit set on it. That's really what makes them so wonderful, because there's a glorious fragrance that they give off. It is really magical, and it makes it worth all the effort to be able to bring that in the house and to be able to have that lovely fragrance in a time when you're not getting much out of anything else.
I love mine. Mine's actually a variegated lemon tree that I got here last season. So
there you go.
She's beautiful. So we'll kind of continue on the tropicals, talking about those a little bit more. We do have a fair amount of hibiscus still in stock that are all in pretty much full bloom. You can see this lovely one from Monrovia over here that has the yellow bloom that you can see back here.
Yep.
Tyler, can you see it?
I'm on it.
He's on it. He's always on everything. But just a really good selection. We were out for a little bit of time, and we've got a few things back in. One of my favorite is the star jasmine. It's actually can be a perennial. I have one planted right off my front porch in a pot, and it stayed green all winter.
Yeah, they're what we classify as marginally hardy here. But yes, if you can get it in a protected spot, they can do quite well, and they also are wonderfully fragrant.
Oh yeah, I've got that one on my front porch. My lemon tree is on my back porch, so I've got two nice scents on the front and the back. So it's lovely.
There you go.
Yeah. And then one thing that I love, and I'm probably going to buy it today, this Tango Twist, Mandevilla that we got in a few weeks ago. This pink, like ruffly bloom. It's
Is that a double?
It's a double
It is
flower?
a double. Do I need to turn it, Tyler, to see it a little bit better?
No,
You can give it a wiggle, but
Okay, give it a wiggle. There, it's right there. There she is. Look at her go.
Yeah.
And this one isn't fully open.
And
there-
I still see a lot of buds coming up on those.
Yeah, there's a
so-
lot of new growth. All the ones that we have right now will be in full bloom probably within the next week or two. They're just gorgeous.
And the
really
great thing
healthy.
about Mandevilla is if they're in a sufficient amount of sunlight and you've got them with a good enough fertility and soil, they'll continue to flower throughout the summer season. They're not like a once and done. Again, those are tropical, so if you're going to try to winter that over, you need to prepare accordingly. One of the little tricks that I like for people who are, say, if you're going to buy maybe a 1 gallon size plant, is to get you an old used nursery container, and we have a lot of them around here, so you could just ask for one and we would bestow it upon you, and plant that in that container, then plant that whole container in the ground, and then you can put mulch around it. That way, if you decide you're going to bring it in over the winter, you just pull the whole container up and you don't have to actually dig it out or disturb any of the roots, so your chances of success go way up by not cutting any of those roots. So that's a little pro tip.
A pro tip. There it is.
And Austin's really good. I had not seen the pro tip previously about using the T-shirt in your
Cocoa liner.
cocoa liner. So yes, it does help to anything you can do. Cocoa liners drain really well, perhaps in a small volume too well.
Too well. And the wind gets through them so bad that it just dries stuff out.
And they're up where they're generally located. They're up and in the light and in the air. So
Exposed,
those are the kind of things that anybody who has one of those almost certainly would be relegated to twice a day watering to
Pretty
keep
much.
things looking well, because once things grow into it at all, they're going to dry out really fast. What else you got, Cary?
Well, we'll just move on to some of our perennials. So the last couple of weeks we had Joy on the show and we were talking about
we want to thank Joy.
perennials.
We want to thank Joy for
Yes.
being on the last couple of weeks, and also for what she does every week as far as decorating our studio. That is her area and her domain here at Bates Nursery, and she is a wealth of information. So thank you, Joy, for your efforts on a weekly basis, particularly the last two.
She is. She's fantastic. Actually, Tyler and I got to see her garden a couple days ago because we're doing some garden tours. So that will be released shortly.
Wonderful.
The world will get to see Joy's garden.
A little tease there,
And Austin's is next.
And Joy is also there's a great video that Austin has put up about her talk that she did with the Harpeth Conservancy regarding gardening efforts there, and specifically with native plants. So we're looking forward to sharing that out with everybody. Is that already available to the general public, Tyler? Or
It's on our YouTube, and it is actually on a blog too, under tips and tricks on the website.
So you can get to that most easily by going to the website and clicking on the YouTube channel. Is that the easiest way to get there? Or?
Yep. Or if you're already navigated to Bates Nursery, which David showed off earlier, and you're checking out our webinars, you'll want to just hit the blogs tab and click on tips and tricks. It's the newest blog.
All right. So there you go. So we're really cranking out the useful information portion of our season here, and this is where we've got more time to work on it. So I encourage you to take advantage of it whenever your schedule permits. That's the great thing about it. It's on demand whenever you want it. It's there. So now I've got all that said. I'll let you get back to what you were saying about
So back
perennials.
over here to perennials to plant. So I brought in some more shade plants because we haven't really talked about that a lot lately, and we do have a ton in stock right now. So I brought a few of my favorites. Like I said, we have plenty right now. I've got the bleeding heart, which I have a few in my garden. It's been one of my favorite plants since I was little.
Spectabilis is a wonderful plant.
It's gorgeous. No, you can't beat it. You're right. An ostrich fern back here. We've got a couple hostas. I know we were dwindled down for quite a bit of time. It looked a little sad back there where the hostas were, but we are back in stock and we have quite a few.
As it turns out, hostas are very popular.
They are.
And where we have them located, they're right beside the aisleway going into the greenhouse. And apparently there were few people who could resist grabbing one or more during the course of the spring. So yes, we've worked. Julie has done a fabulous job of getting more in, and Joy's gotten them out there in the area. So if you didn't get a hosta that you were hoping to get earlier, probably have it now.
Probably have it back. I was one of those people. I think I bought about 7 this year, and I will probably get more.
What is it with hosta? Why is it so popular? I've often wondered.
They're just so cool. They all look so different. And
My house is surrounded by them.
oh yeah, we talked about that last week.
Well, as long as you can deal with snails and slugs, which is the pest that really gives them the most grief, and you have shade, they're such a wonderful accent plant to intersperse with other things. The shade-loving ferns or all of the heucheras, and it has a contrasting foliage that doesn't look like anything else.
It doesn't.
And it really makes. Not only do they stand out, I think they make the things around them stand out even more.
Yeah.
You just said it. You asked me last week why I had so many hostas, and I think it's because for the most part, except for my garden, my whole yard is nothing but shade.
Yeah, and they're one of those great plants that you can use. I think a growing number of people are reducing, or if not completely eliminating, turf in their yards because they prefer to have ornamental plants that can give them a variety of looks throughout the year. And certainly if you have shade, you already don't have turf. So in those areas is where that having that extensive selection of shade perennials that we have at Bates Nursery, it gives people that opportunity to be able to expand the palette of what they have in their garden and to be able to create interest throughout the growing season.
Mm-hmm. And honestly, right now it's so hot that I'd rather be gardening in the shade. So you can come make those shade beds and be a little bit cooler.
There you go. So anyway, we thank you for all that information about
you're welcome.
all
Anytime.
the things. So come out and if you want to know more about the tropicals that Cary talked about, you're probably going to catch her up there in that area. Of course, you'll see Joy, who has been on the last couple of weeks, and thanks again for that. Talk about perennials, so go down there and check both those ladies out and get the wealth of information that they have. But it's now time for the Lowen Report.
It's time for the Lowen Report on the At Home Show.
Lowen Report today.
Yeah.
The report.
Have you been here since I redid that? These two guys complained so much about that original one I made.
It sounded like a cheap version of Monty Python.
That's what
did,
Josh said that he wanted. So I made it.
Consider the source is all I
Well,
gotta say.
when I asked you guys, you said, "Oh, that sounds okay." I said, "All right, I'm going to do what Josh said." So
Yeah. Right. Well, upon further review,
yeah,
we got the Lowen Report ironed out.
You were just a few decades too early.
We always grateful to have your expertise and your interaction here on the show, Austin, and of course, it's summertime, and there are things that are statement plants for color in the landscape. And I know you've got a couple of things that are near and dear to your heart. Also, one of those plants in particular to Mr. Adam Burton.
Oh, yeah.
So what do you got?
This week we've got crepe myrtle and vitex. So crepe myrtle, so popular, so beautiful. I'm totally into sun-loving flowering plants.
Yes,
Sorry,
you are.
Cary, but I could kind
I
of
don't
care
know.
less about shade-loving foliage.
Okay.
Well, yeah, he's got. You can't really see all those behind.
He has to let you know it.
But
He did.
He's got a nice. There you go. There's a lovely crepe.
Look at that purple one.
That is
I love
gorgeous.
crepe myrtle.
Yes.
Now, David, is crepe myrtle a bush or a tree?
Yes. and it depends on which cultivar you're talking about.
Yes, it
because there are some, such as Natchez, this is the one, the white flowering crepe
Yes, that
myrtle.
white.
It is most certainly a tree.
It is.
It's a multi-trunk tree normally,
Mm-hmm.
but it is a tree. I have 3 in my yard, and the power company calls them trees because they keep every few years. I mean, we really work at trying to keep them below. I mean, and I've got power lines that are 30 plus feet up, and they still have to be managed. So I'm at that stage with my crepe myrtles. You know, you think for a lot of years they're not going to get there, then all of a sudden, boom,
They're there.
But not all crepe myrtles get huge like that. That's actually the largest growing of what we will typically see in the area. There are some old lilac types that I don't think are even named cultivars. I've got one in the yard over here at next door to Bates Nursery. But most of the crepe myrtles that people use are not going to be these giant growers. There's a whole range from mid-size to very low growing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the most common low-growing one called Pocomoke is a very round shrub. It's kind of like a 4x4 pink blooming shrub that's tried and true, really. It's a good little plant.
And a lot of people might mistakenly believe that those are azaleas if you don't get right up on it, because they serve a very similar function, except that they're able to tolerate a hot place where azaleas could not tolerate that much heat. So that would be the first giveaway, and the fact that they are, beginning to bloom really, really intensely this time of year, and pretty much will continue through. If you will trim those and keep the dead blooms off, they'll reflower throughout the season.
Yeah, I looked at my crepe myrtle this morning. It's a big old fuchsia pink one. It's old. I don't even know what variety it is, but it is full bud right now. By this time next week, I'd say it'll be probably half show.
Now, Pocomoke is just one of those named varieties of the, I don't know if they call it the Native American series or what they call it, but there's Pocomoke, there's Navajo,
Tonto,
Muskogee,
Sioux, Muskogee. There's a whole line of those.
Yeah.
All good plants.
Yeah.
Crepe myrtle's just a tried and true. Every summer you're going to get a long bloom. It's probably the longest blooming tree in the summer that we sell, tree/shrub.
Yeah, but you probably don't want, even if you have a lot of sun, you probably don't want a landscape filled with just crepe myrtle, because in the wintertime, as much as they give you all in the summer, you get nothing but dead sticks in the winter.
Dormant sticks.
They are they're not actually dead, but they look like they are because they are a deciduous, and they are the last thing typically to show signs of life in the spring and the first thing to go dormant. I mean, at the first frost, they're devoid of foliage, so they check out quickly. So while they're a wonderful addition, you don't want to go crazy with those because the penalty you pay in the wintertime is pretty severe. Mm-hmm. It's a nice plant to complement with other sun-loving conifers, for instance.
Oh, for sure. While we're here, let's switch over before we run out of time. Let's go to Vitex.
Yes, sir.
Chase tree, common name, very good replacement to crepe myrtle. If you've already got crepe myrtle, don't want to use it. I actually did a Worth a Grow segment on Vitex this past week, and it's another kind of
check that out.
Yeah, small growing deciduous flowering tree that can be limbed up to look more like a tree rather than a shrub. If you don't, by the way, Vitex is right here. These blooming guys right behind me, they're in full show.
Yes.
And if you don't cut them or limb them up a little bit, they tend to just look like a big, large shrub, if you will. But another good plant, it's a summertime bloomer that bees and butterflies absolutely love. So if you're into the pollinators, getting a Vitex is maybe what you ought to do.
Now, there's a lot of ways, and you kind of touched on it, to be able to manage those. Are you an advocate of allowing it to grow, or do you say cut it back severely every year and let it flush back out?
For me, at my house, it's a let it grow. I'm more into tree form things. So, yeah, I'm letting my Vitex get up there. Now, remember, Vitex sometimes suffers some dieback from the top. So, I have one in the yard. It's called Flipside. It's a cool cultivar. It's got backside purple leaves. Fantastic. But over the winter, I suffered a little bit of dieback, probably about 6 to 12 inches of dieback from the top.
Now, did you cut it back much further than that?
No, I let it leaf out where it was going to leaf out. It shows you where you go ahead and cut it. So I went ahead and cut it back after it leafed out, and now it's a round shrub. I don't know. It was small when I planted it.
Now, this would be a good plant to use. If you could use it as a foundation planting if you had really tall south or west facing windows, or if you had that you could keep below. And if that was the case, you might need to go in there every year and cut them back to maybe a couple of feet below. That way, when they flush new growth, you're going to get all that show of color right there at eye level, and not block off your view out the window. And certainly, you'll have a wonderful view of that. Otherwise, you could use them in a blank wall space to allow them to grow up. If you had a singular plant to let it grow up, they'll get large enough to do that. And again, most of the cultivars of Vitex are going to be more medium to larger growing. There really are no true dwarf types of Vitex as yet, correct?
Yeah, there's one that they call blue puffball that's supposed to be pretty short, but as you mentioned, Adam Burton has talked to me about that one. It suffers dieback pretty severely. They can hold hardy as some of the other varieties.
Yeah, and that's one of the when you delve out there into the experimental area, when you're really wanting, and no one locally that I know of has done more research into it than Adam Burton. He is a Vitex. If you ever worked with Adam Burton or you ever have his services, you will have a Vitex in your landscape.
Yeah,
I can promise you that. He's got, 20?
I think 15 now, at least, different specific cultivars.
He probably would have 20, except not all of them have survived.
Exactly.
He's really is one of those guys who can speak to Vitex from experience and extensively. So he knows the ones that do well and ones that don't do well.
Yep.
So final thoughts on use of these wonderful summer flowering but deciduous plants. That means to drop their leaves in the winter. You got to have a full sun location for them to do
for sure
pretty well. You've got to also be mindful that they're even crepe myrtle can have some dieback issues.
Oh yeah, it can.
And it's not. And again, if you do get that, the easiest thing to do is allow them to show you where the new growth is coming out and simply cut them back to that point if you don't want to overprune them.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm sure all y'all remember, anybody that grows crepe myrtle 2 years ago, actually it was last season, was it the late frost got all the crepe myrtles? Oh my God, the phone calls we got from, is my crepe myrtle dead? Is it dead? They almost always come back from the roots, but we had a late freeze last year that really whacked them.
And let's talk for just a moment about what occurs when something, we're typically speaking, the real damage occurs when in the fall we have had a very long lasting summer. It stayed hot, and then it turns cold quickly. Now, 2 years ago, we had that event happened where we had 90-degree temperatures one week and it went to 17 for 2 nights.
Yeah.
So a lot of crepe myrtle, a lot of other things that had not hardened off, Japanese maple, a lot of those got damaged severely as well. And then you go forward to this most recent year where we had, last year I should say, where we had it happen in the springtime, where we had early warm up, things get flushed out, and then we have the same freezing conditions. Now, frost won't kill it. It may burn it back. But what happens when we have those freezing conditions is that this is a cellular level injury that occurs to the plants. And when the cells, why plants are able to withstand cold temperatures when they're completely dormant, and they frequently can't when they're in active growth, is due to the amount of, it's the turgor pressure that's within those cells, and that's the amount of level of how much fluid the cells are actually engorged with. And when they're growing, they swell up to where they're fully, they're crowding against each other. The downside to that is when that sap freezes, and if you know how water freezes, it forms crystals, and those crystals puncture the cell walls, and when that happens, you get tremendous damage, and it can be death. And we saw that happen to a lot of them in that situation. So what you hope for in our landscapes is to have a seasonable transition from growing season in the fall through to dormant season in the winter, and then the reverse in the springtime, where the winter is hopefully over with before it starts to warm up. You see it a lot more often in the springtime because we tend to have these seasons where we get this really unusually warm up in maybe late February, early March, and then April or even May come around and we have a freeze that really zaps things. So those are the toughest things to deal with in your landscape with respect to weather, which we all know we don't have control over.
Not at all, especially here.
So, okay, what else we got?
We do have a few more questions to wrap up.
Okay, very good.
We did get one on our Facebook page that Josh sent over last night. So we should have photos. I'm sure you guys saw that I showed.
Give me just a second. I'll see if I've got them.
While you're looking, I'm going to read you this question. It's from Teresa Olson. Good morning, guys. I've been vegetable gardening for a long time. I always plant seed potatoes, Yukon Golds. This year was no different. I planted some in a raised bed and some in a grow bag. I dug up the spuds in the raised bed earlier in the week. Yesterday, I was going to get the ones out of the grow bags and noticed small tomatoes growing on all 6 of them. In all my probably 40 years of gardening, I've never seen anything like this. Any ideas, comments? Here are some pictures. I did cut one open, and it looked exactly like a tomato inside.
Well, it's a simple answer to this.
They're first cousins.
Yeah, they're very, very closely related, and unfortunately, that is not a tomato. Those are simply the potato fruits. So that's where potatoes, if you're going to do from seed potatoes, which is pretty rare, you usually just do them from their, from the actual potato.
Right.
But if you did want to, for some reason, collect seed and plant them from seed, you would harvest those, let them dry out, and collect the seeds, and you could do it that way.
So those don't taste like a tomato?
No, not at all. I wouldn't even eat them. I've never actually eaten one of those potatoes.
I would be curious if anyone had a recipe for that. But yeah, you don't normally see them get to that stage because that's indicative of that the tubers that are in the ground are ready to be harvested.
Pretty much, yeah. You harvest the potatoes before they go to flower and fruit for the most part, but sometimes there's some overlap there. So, cool picture and good question. But yeah, you got some potato fruit.
Yeah, and when people who are thinking about perhaps growing potatoes in the future, and she's obviously has done a wonderful job of it, Teresa, a longtime listener and viewer of our program, when you plant them, you kind of plant them progressively as you go along. You plant the eyes down there, let them sprout, then you add soil, and you continue to add it because you only put it like this deep in the bottom at first. And even if you have a tall container, you just continue to fill it with soil as those stems grow. Mm-hmm. What happens is that you get sprouts off of those stems all the way up, and that's where your tubers form. And that's how you get them in the whole substrate of the soil, the entire column that way. So anyway, thanks for that great question. What else you got,
All
Cary?
right, we got two more. One from Ann Hamilton, 615. Can I bring my Boston ferns inside when it gets cold? Will they survive in the winter?
Yes, and I don't know.
Maybe.
It'll be tricky.
They
need humidity inside if they want to.
Maybe a
don't want
bathroom
them to
window.
go dormant.
How about bathroom window?
Yeah, they like bright indirect light.
And they like humidity.
They do.
So bathroom would make sense. You can also let it go dormant, put it in a garage where it doesn't get light. Water it like once a month. You don't have to keep it wet.
Yeah, they will come back sometimes if you just keep them in a protected area, like you said, a shed or somewhere cool but not cold.
Well, here we've run through an hour already.
That was quick. We'll get to the rest of the questions next week.
So drop those off. Tune in again next week, 8 a.m. every Saturday morning here with the At Home Show. Josh Cary and David Bates. And yes, Josh will be here next week. So if in case you're lamenting, in case you are, check us out. You can see us on demand anytime, either on Facebook Live or check us out on our YouTube page, and go to basenursery.com for links to